Welcome to our latest roundup of news and polls from Ipsos MORI. And this month, well, as most months, we've been looking again at how the public believe COVID-19 is going, and in particularly aspects of the government's performance on communicating around it. And we found that although people find the travel advice pretty clear and when they should self-isolate at home pretty clear, a majority say that they weren't clear about who and how many people they can meet with. And it's interesting that after this research came out, of course, the government has now, in light of rising infections, issued new instructions that meeting more than 6 people in the pub or socially is now illegal, with quite large fines for breaking those rules. So hopefully that will make it clearer. And at the same time, what's clear is that there is real support from the public for the government doing whatever it takes. As I've said in previous calls, we've got 87% of the public saying that they support a local lockdown in their area if it's necessary to tackle it. And one of the things that's happened during the pandemic is that whereas back in May, we found 6 out of 10 people saying that the measures the government had taken were about right, and of course we were deep in lockdown at that point, by July, that had drifted down and is now only at 40%, with half the population saying the government hasn't gone far enough and more should be done. So really interesting to see that the public's anxiety about the disease is not going away. And, you might say that the rise in infections that we're now seeing may be part of that. When we look at attitudes to how we recover from COVID-19 globally, we've just polled across 13 different countries, and we found that absolutely everywhere the public prioritises health and well-being well ahead of economic recovery. There is nowhere where people say, look, a few people will die, but overall we'll all be fine and let's get the economy going. Everywhere, health is top. In Britain, 72% prioritise health and well-being, only 28% economic growth. We'll see how that changes as we go into the autumn and unfortunately, very likely, unemployment starts to rise. It's more nuanced when we ask people to choose between social progress, which we've defined as being things like increasing life expectancy, better health and education outcomes, versus economic growth. And both Britain and America and Canada are pretty much split between the economy and sort of social goals. But it's very marked when you look at places like Chile or Russia or India, where it's absolutely the other way around. People are absolutely interested not so much in economic growth per se, but instead in actually just outcomes for human beings. And reminding us of inequality and health services, etc. in those countries. But overall, globally, if we're thinking about the choice between opening and unopening an economy to fight COVID-19, people prioritise caution over economic growth. We've also found, fortunately, that people's confidence about using the NHS itself has returned. We've got 3/4 of people saying that they're happy using an NHS hospital. That's up from 52% during the height of the pandemic, and more people reporting using health services. And hopefully those numbers will be maintained. There's a huge backlog for the NHS to get through. And that there is no second spike that starts to see increasing hospital admissions for COVID-19. We've also looked at what people are doing about their holidays. You might have just had one or be planning your late summer getaway. But we looked at what people thought they might do over the next 12 months, and a very strong sense that people are going to stay in Britain and relatively fewer are going to be travelling abroad. So only 1 in 5 talking about going outside Europe, and only about 3 in 10 talking about going on holiday in Europe next year. So some of those rather pessimistic forecasts, perhaps, maybe they're realistic forecasts from the airlines around numbers not getting back to 2019 until 2023. At the moment, looking at these sorts of numbers, that doesn't necessarily seem to be unduly pessimistic, unfortunately. We've also, with the developer St Modwin, looked at what sort of housing people want in future as they start to think about life after lockdown. And what's clear is that people are finding moving away from cities more attractive than moving into them. 49% say they want to move out of a town or city centre, and only 31% would like to be closer to it. So majority opinion towards a more distributed sort of form of life. And in terms of the things people want, great broadband and green spaces, and those sorts of things are well ahead of parking spaces or things that might do more to fight climate change and better insulation, etc., energy efficiency. So the internet and green spaces are top. And of course, speaking personally, if you've been locked down, I think those are things that might make it bearable. Finally, one of the biggest events this year is going to be the American general election in November. We will report regularly on this. We're polling on an almost daily basis in the United States on it. The first analysis of likely voters gives Biden a clear lead, and by historical standards, if nothing changes, he ought to win, but nothing can be sure. The party conventions didn't really change anything at all. We've just had the Republican Democratic virtual conventions. Donald Trump's was, as usual, fairly unconventional, but none of that seems to have really moved the dial. And so the sort of horse race polls of who you're going to vote for are largely static. But what is changing is Joe Biden's favourability ratings. The proportion of people who say that they're positive about him is up from 40% in mid-August to 46% now. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has gone down from 35% to 31%. Still a long way to go to polling day in America. Lots of things can change. But one thing that people on both the Democrat and Republican side of the fence, and it is now a very polarised country on many issues, one of the things that they absolutely agree on is that they are in a battle for the soul of the nation. So that election is going to have consequences for countries all over the world, and we will keep polling and keep you updated. And finally, if you're interested in how you can grow a brand in this current environment, do join my colleague Eleanor Thornton-Firkin on the 23rd to 24th of September. There's a link here. You can sign up. This is at the FE Leadership Awards, looking at brands and what you can do to drive growth, and many of us need it. We'll also look in the latest highlights online at what captains of industry, the people running the FTSE companies, think about both the government's economic plans, actually rather more positive than under Mrs May, but also their views on the economy. 2/3 think it's going to get worse over the next 12 months. And then finally, we looked at the vaccine for COVID-19. One will eventually emerge when the trials are complete. And most people in Britain say they would take it. But there are a lot of people all over the world, and in some countries, very large proportion, who are pretty anxious about it. And that's all for this week. So lots of interesting stuff. Lots more on the website. Do have a look. And I hope to see you at one of our future research events, which we're now running virtually every week. Thank you.